So welcome everybody. Thank you for attending this workshop. My name is Mike Javents. I'm Vice President of Sales for TZA, and I will be presenting to you today with Brian Duback, Regional S&D with Snyder's-Lance. And going to take you through our story, if you will, about working with Snyder's-Lance and really how that started and going through how we got to determine what the challenges were, and then getting to the path and the program to really committing to a high-performance culture at Snyder's-Lance, how that looks today, and where they see it going in the future as well. So just as a matter of introduction, Brian and myself here, I want to sort of set the table for you on the agenda here. We're going to talk a little bit about what our companies do, a little bit about TZA, a little bit about Snyder's-Lance. Then I'm going to hand things over to Brian. He's going to go through the operations at Snyder's-Lance. Talk about some of the challenges that we met as we went through this process, what a labor management program looks like from a very 30,000-foot level, if you will, and then how we applied that to what we did at Snyder's-Lance. Went through a facility redesign. Very important to understand that these things don't always start out with just the labor. A lot of times it's some of the processes that could currently be sub-optimized within your environment that won't lead to a good labor environment. So it might be just a matter of providing automation, removing automation, the type of storage media, the pick paths, things of this nature. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then really important, the results of this program. Some of the things that Snyder's-Lance has seen in real numbers. Brian will share that with you. I think you'll find that very interesting. And then lessons learned and next steps. So without any further ado, I'll just kind of get into a little background of TZA. We are a labor management consulting and software firm. We've been in business for over 30 years working with clients like Snyder's-Lance to determine what those labor opportunities look like within their environment, what we can do to work with them to improve their performance, to optimize their labor force, and really look across the supply chain. Brian will get into maybe a little bit about that and how we're looking beyond just the warehouse and distribution portion of the business right now as well. We've been in business for over 30 years, so I have a lot of experience in this area, and really are a results-driven company. A lot of our business is built on references, is built on repeat business, and we do that because we really go in, set a baseline, and then determine the results from the program as it's implemented. And I think you'll see some of that today in the presentation as well. That's real numbers, real profitability, real ROI that can be measured in dollars. So, just a brief overview of TZA. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brian.
Turn
the green button.
Okay. Well, thank you for attending our session today. A little bit about Snyder's-Lance. Snyder's-Lance recently merged with Diamond Foods to be now about a $2.6 billion company. So we're a mid-sized company. It's Cape Cod, it's Lance, it's Snyder's of Hanover, it's Kettle brand, Pretzel Crisp. Those are some of our brands that we work with, Emerald Nuts. So those are the portfolio we have. We ship out of 9 warehouses at the time. We're expanding to more with the Diamond Network. And we distribute through grocery, mass merch, club, convenience stores, and other service outlets. This case study that we're talking about today is with our Charlotte operations. We operate an off-site warehouse. It's 254,000 square feet. We ship about 25 million cases. And we are growing as a business, so our demands for space and productivity were essential. We have about 100 associates, and before we started this project, or when Mike and I met about 2 years ago actually at this MODEX, we were running about 17 cents a case for labor. As Mike and I had our initial discussion, a couple of things we wanted to work on as part of this project was we needed something to be equitable. And when our associates would come to me and my team and say, it's not really fair. I'm giving you everything I got. I'm pressing as hard as I can. I'm giving you 110% every day. But Billy over there, he hides in the corner all day long. And he doesn't really work as hard as I do. And I want to do my best, but I just don't think it's fair. Or, hey, I got a really tough order. Why are you looking at me like I did something wrong when over there I had an easy order today, right? You hear about those equitable conversations in your business. For us as well, performance across the week was critical. Our week exponentially grew on Thursday and Friday, and so I couldn't afford to have one associate lay down on Friday, or otherwise we'd be behind and customers would be either late on their deliveries or we would be incurring overtime to get the cases out the door. As you saw, we had horrible costs on our labor side, and so this project was really about getting that return on investment. But as I mentioned, we're in a growing business. We had a long-term lease in operation, so we had to optimize every single square inch of that building. And so part of this project as well was how do we use that space, because all of us know if we go off-site, it costs even more money for off-site storage. And one of my basic premises is always having a continuous improvement culture. So as we embarked on this journey, one of the things we wanted to partner with TZA on is we need to make this a journey that's going to involve our associates and get them engaged in a project to make it effective. So part of the program that we had, I'll go through it, was started with a lean event. We wanted to have an event to lean out the process. We had SOPs, but we wanted to look at, is there anything we're missing to make it even leaner, less touch points, less pallet moves? We wanted to relook at our case picking operation. We used to have a belt system. We did floor stacking. We moved away from that operation. And so we had some opinions, but at the executive levels of the company, there was a lot of banging heads on, I don't really trust you guys to go down that path. So we had to validate them on our lean event that what was the best approach. All of that leading up to a labor management program, again, getting back to an equitable system where we could record our performance of our associates, allow them to know it's fair, and ensure that we're getting the best return on investment out of everybody in the labor we put in our efforts. And our long-term goal is pay for performance. All right. As Mike said, we wanted to lean out the process as much as possible, and we wanted to leverage an expert from the outside to say, how do we cube out the box? And in our operation, we had an old pick belt, as I mentioned, and we knew we were pulling that out based on the lean event, but we said, hey, what else can we do to sharpen this up? And TZA went in and looked at before and after of how do we take this layout, make it a nice clean layout, looked at transportation time of how we can move across our building, and came up with a much better design for us. This is our picking area here in the future state. But it gave us a much cleaner design so we could be more efficient in our day-to-day tasks and reduce our overall tack time with our associates. But going to the final part, the results, and I'll talk back a couple things that Mike mentioned. Number one, this journey wasn't about going through and trying to terminate people. It was just trying to make sure we got everyone to work at the same rate. No one was running around trying to, achieve their standard. It's based on, time-tested government data for some of it, as well as, how fast does a person walk. That's the goal. The goal is to get people to work at a consistent pace. There's time in there for personal fatigue, delays that happen in your normal day. So we expect that someone's going to get slowed down because a forklift's driving by. That's all built into the standards. As Mike mentioned too, which is very critical, is it's a journey. You're looking at how do you get your utilization to be higher over time. When we started this process, probably 80% of our operation, we had a warehouse management system that was feeding ProTrack, or TZA's ProTrack software, to give an output and a standard. There's about 20% of our operation, we didn't have that data. So we had to generate a manual standard in the short term. We've now leveraged the software and the concept to get a solution to get a directed environment for our loading section that we didn't have before. So it's helped giving us data and a need to make our WMS system better. So there's a lot of components that will help over time. But as Mike mentioned, the one thing I like about working with TZA is we started off this journey, we did an assessment, and they said, you're going to be probably looking at your operation, you're probably going to save about $355,000 the first year. And if you do everything right and everything goes well, your leadership team does all the things they need to do to make the software program or the labor management program work, you could save $650,000 for the first year. So for me, being the end user and saying, okay, I got to sign the check for this program, am I going to achieve this or not? And in this instance, we did and then some. We achieved $595,000 in labor reduction through our first year of the program that we've been on it, and that was with shipping 1 million more cases than the prior year. So labor cost per case went from 17 a year and a half before that to 9 cents a case in that time frame. So we obviously got our results. But what was more important is we didn't have these struggles of how do I get my Fridays complete. We didn't have the situations with, okay, this person's not covering because I got to bring overtime today to make sure I get that extra, truck received or loaded out. And more importantly, as we went through the whole journey, we had associates that were part of the process. If this would have been a leader-driven process, we would have all fallen on our face because no one would have followed. But because associates were involved with the process from the very beginning, they were the ones that said, wow, this is pretty interesting. You can actually track how we're doing, and better yet, you could track the group over here that's not doing anything. And so that helped get the buy-in, and then they were the ones that helped develop where we went with the future of this program. I can confidently tell you as well, we're 8 months into the actual labor management program of standards and ProTrack and executing it every day. We haven't terminated anybody, okay? As mentioned, that wasn't the goal. Everyone has got substantially better because part of the process is the leaders have to do observations every day and coach the underperformers or investigate why someone's overperforming the standard. And as we've gone through that process, every day giving people feedback, they've all got better. And additionally, they come to us now and say, I had a rough week. Can you observe me to figure out how I can get better? So this process it's very leader-driven. They got to be part of the process. They got to be on-the-floor leaders. But if you do, you can get a tremendous result by leveraging the program. I'll point out, too, it's never-ending. We're actually running in the 150s and 160s over the last 2 months. And why is that? Is because we're leveraging the utilization. It was one thing to get everyone to work on standard, on a directed standard, but the simple things like batteries, our wireless system's not working where it needs to, clamping product. We've continued to add standards and tighten up our standards to make them more effective over time. With that, we've increased our utilization, and now our associates are running about 84 or 85% of their paid day is accounted for. So it's getting better from originally started at about 60. Okay? So as just in summary, as we go through this, you want to leverage your employees to be part of the process. If they're part of the process, you can get more towards the high end of what the result can be possible, right? You also want to lean out the process beforehand. Leverage the lean event. We thought we had a good operation, but when we went through the lean study, we had experts outside our team that saw things differently. And they brought in examples and said, hey, this grocery company does this activity. Could you possibly do this in your operation? It challenged us to get better, and a lot of those activities we were able to put in place before we rolled out our labor management program. As I mentioned, standards are going to evolve over time. We've constantly tweaked our standards. The one neat thing about this journey, when we started, our actual process of picking one case was pretty archaic. It took 17 seconds to go through and pick a case the way our system worked from a WMS. So we went through and worked with our IT team to narrow that time down by just simple things in the system. And so we didn't have that visibility. We didn't have that push to our IT department to say, hey, we have a problem. And so the data that we now have from the standards helps us to push those challenging conversations you have within your organization. And finally, developing labor standards will help you grow new standards. As mentioned, we've rolled out a clamping standard we didn't have before. Wade, who's in the second row up here at our Indianapolis facility, he just rolled out a cycle counting standard that we didn't have before. So all of these little standards, it sort of becomes contagious, and you try to find a better way of doing it. Battery changing. Wade's team rolled out battery changing standards. So eventually you're counting for all 8 hours of your time, and that's the goal. For Snyder's-Lance, what's next? We rolled out the Indianapolis facility this year in January. In the next month, we'll be rolling out our Hanover facility. And then as we go into 2017, we plan on rolling out more warehouses at that point. At the moment, we're also looking at other functions and operations inside Snyder's-Lance. We're looking at our material transactions. It's not part of our warehouse teams, but that's in a process of being explored right now. And additionally, we're looking at the manufacturing side at how we develop standards for some of our operations on the manufacturing side. We've seen the benefit, and now it's actually transcending across the organization. Actually, last month, I was with our chief IT officer, and he said to me, this is the one program that has a guaranteed result in the organization. We need to do more of it. And he was sharing that with his Diamond counterparts. And so that's him speaking, and I believe it as well. There is a significant return on investment if you do the program the right way, you involve your associates, and follow the labor management program as they recommended. So that's our next steps that we have as an organization.